All right, everyone, welcome to Strictly Sports. I am Jacob Brown, joined here by Stephen Cashin and special guest Jensen Jennings joining us. He's a Brewers fan for this Milwaukee Brewers 2020 season preview. We're going to keep going on the same format that we've been doing, lineup, bench, starting rotation, bullpen, and prospects. But we just made a joke before the show. We don't know if there are any prospects in this Brewer system. There are none in the top 100. So let's just get started with this starting lineup here. New addition to the team, leading off and playing third base. You have Eric Sogard, split time with the Blue Jays and Rays last year. In 110 games, hit 290 with 13 home runs, 40 RBIs. This is a huge jump in power for him. His previous home run high was 3 in 2018, and that was actually with the Brewers. His weighted run created plus is above league average at 115. Woba is as well at 342. So a nice leadoff guy, contact hitter. In that two-hole, this is my lineup, by the way. I have Avisail Garcia hitting second, playing left field. He played 125 games, hit 20 home runs, 72 RBIs last year, and is just above league average in weighted run created plus. And Woba. Then you have Christian Yelich. This is the dude hitting third, MVP candidate every year. Signed a 9-year, $215 million extension in the offseason. Last year, he got injured at the end of the year, but in 130 games, he hit 329 with 44 bombs, 97 RBIs, a 429 on base percentage, a WOBA of 442, which, Steven, we've been doing 3 teams now. That's by far the highest WOBA that we've seen. Weighted run created plus of 174. 30 steals, by the way, as well. Amazing player there. Then you have Keston Hiura, the second baseman, cleaning up in limited time, hit 19 bombs and 49 ribbies. We'll get to him in a second. Then Ryan Braun, I have him hitting fifth and playing first base. I am also playing first base over Justin Smoke. The stats just aren't even close. Ryan Braun is actually statistically rated better than Paul Goldschmidt at first base right now. Then you have Omar Narvaez, the new addition at catcher, replacing Grandal. They got him in a trade from Seattle. Then Lorenzo Cain struggled last year hitting seventh and then hitting eighth. I have it as being Luis Urias, the shortstop they got from San Diego in a trade. He was a top prospect for a number of years. So, Jensen, we'll start with you. What's your view on this Brewers lineup, mixing and matching here?
I'm actually pretty excited about it. I mean, they made a lot of changes in the offseason, so not really sure what to expect from first base or third base. I really like Urias, but I kind of think that drawing a blank on his name, but
Arcia, the other shortstop?
Yeah, I think Arcia will still be the starter at shortstop to start the season because I know Urias got hurt playing fall ball in Mexico, so he's been kind of rehabbing.
Oh, that's a problem. I mean, maybe, though, with this hiatus, he could be back, but I see what you're saying. They might just give Arcia the nod to start it off. What do you think about that first base race, though? I think it's unquestionably, it has to be Ryan Braun over Justin Smoke.
I think it should be Braun as well. I'm just worried about his health and how he'll hold up playing every day. But I know they got some guys who can kind of give him a breather every now and then and give him a break as well. So he should be the starter at first in my mind.
Yeah, I mean, that's the beautiful thing with this team. You know, like if Lorenzo Cain needs a day off, you could throw Yelich in center field, Garcia in right, Braun in left, and then put Smoke at first. This is a team that likes to mix and match. What do you think, though, Stephen? I mean, Ryan Braun, in terms of weighted run created plus and WOBA, he's rated better than Paul Goldschmidt.
Yeah, his stats really they catch your eye. I mean, he hits for average too, batting 285 last year, 22 homers, 75 RBIs. I mean, the walks aren't there like what you want him to be to get on base, but I think, I mean, if he stays healthy, he's one of the better players in the league. I mean, we saw it, before he, got caught for, PEDs and all that, and he took a year off and had some time off there. But I think a guy really, if when healthy, is one of the more dangerous players at the plate. I mean, I love his swing. He gets on base, works the middle of the field, and the homers come naturally for him. So definitely a guy who will, I think, be starting at first base for them this season to start. But Justin Smoke right behind him. Same 22 homers, 61 RBIs. He had 79 walks last season. So I think that really is key. I mean, he gets on base a lot more, but definitely a good 1-2 punch there if you're going to platoon both those guys and give them some split time throughout the year.
Yeah, I mean, smokes a guy, 22 bombs, 323 WOBA, 101 weighted drunk rated plus. Those are right at league average. So he's a
Hmm.
guy that you can plug in and he'll do the job. They also have new addition Brock Holt on the bench. Last year in limited time, he only played 87 games due to injury, but he had a 103 weighted run created plus, 333 WOBA, not a lot of power. But I look at the rest of this Brewers lineup. Let's just talk about Yelich for a second. What is it like watching Yelich play every day, Jensen?
Honestly, it's kind of unbelievable. Never really expected to see somebody like that playing for the Brewers. I mean, Braun had his run back in the early 2000s when he was winning an MVP and leading the team, but I've never seen somebody like Christian Yelich play for the Brewers, and it's just so much fun to watch.
I mean, what do you think of him signing that extension as well?
It completely shocked me. I thought there was no way that they were going to be able to get a deal done, and for him to take such another team friendly deal really shows how much he enjoys Milwaukee and how he thinks we have a good shot.
Yeah, and we were talking about it too, Jensen. I mean, that might be a little message for Giannis over there with the Bucks.
Yeah,
Stay in Milwaukee.
exactly. I mean, why not? It's a great place to be.
For sure. And then you look at Keston Hiura, and this is a guy that's very interesting to me. Major league level hit 303 with 19 homers, 49 RBIs in 84 games. He had a BABIP of 402. That's significant. I mean, that means that every time he put the ball in play, it had a 40% chance of being a hit. A WOBA of 388, that's well above average. 139 weighted runs created plus. He does strike out a lot, though, 30% of the time. The big thing to me, though, at the minor league level, he did the exact same thing. He had 19 homers, 49 RBIs at AAA in 57 games, hit 329. And so he was the same player in the minors, same player in the majors, although he has had a jump in homers. He had 13 homers in the minors the year before, and that jumped to, almost a combined 40 this year. So what are your guys' opinions on Keston Hiura, Steven?
I like him a lot. I mean, for a small sample size in his first year in the major leagues, going on his second year now with the Brewers, we talked about the minor league stats transferring right over to the big league game, and that's what you look at. Guys who are going to be players that play in the league for a while, like you talk on 7, 8 years at the minimum. Does their game translate right away? And he didn't miss a beat once he got called up. I mean, the BABIP. I mean, that average right there, 402. I mean, every ball he's putting in play is really, ending up being a base hit. If your average right there is around 400, it's money. I mean, 50 RBIs, practically 19 homers. The guy really, if the numbers really translate again this year, could be a cornerstone for this Brewers lineup and something to keep your eye on. I mean, could be very beneficial in the middle of the lineup for them.
So Jensen, what are your thoughts on Lorenzo Cain? This is a guy that's had a really great career, not so great last year though. Is he a guy that just gets the benefit of the doubt? World Series champion. They'll start him in the year in center field. Do you think there's any chance that if this continues, they might do what I said and say, hey, let's put Braun back in left, Garcia in right, and start Smoke at first because Lorenzo Cain's really declined in play.
Yeah, I just feel like Kane's glove is just so hard to lose out in center field. I mean, he finally won a
Yeah.
Gold Glove, so well deserved there. His bat has kind of slowed off a bit, but I just think what he provides out in the field is just too good to pass up, honestly.
Yeah, because I mean, moving Yelich to center field might be a little bit of a problem there.
And I did want to say one quick thing about Keston, though. One of the concerns that I do have with him is his fielding isn't always the greatest. And he had been benched a few times last year because of it.
Oh, so that's interesting there. I mean, so he's definitely going to have to improve on that in that regard. And they also don't even have a replacement for him anymore. So he's definitely going to have to change that. Another addition for them, too, they made a trade to replace Yasmani Grandal at catcher. They traded for Omar Narvaez from the Mariners last year. And actually, this is a guy that's had a pretty underrated career without people really noticing. He's had some good years with the White Sox. Last year with Seattle. This is the first year that the power started to show up. And you could say what you want. I mean, everyone knows there was the juice balls last year, meaning, that might be why Sogard hit 13 home runs. And that might be why Omar Narvaez hit 22 of them. He also had 278, a WOBA of 345, weighted drunk created plus of 119. So this is a pretty good catcher. But what does the loss of Yasmani Grandal mean to this team? Both of you can answer.
I think it's going to be massive. To me, Grandal was the most important person that they needed to re-sign in the offseason, and I understand why they were afraid to do it because of the term that he was asking for. I mean, you don't really want to be paying a catcher that much money into his mid to late 30s, but I just think the loss is going to be massive.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, you look at catchers in the league now; they're hard to come by. Hitting catchers, at least, batted 246 last year, had 28 homers, 77 RBIs, 380 on base percentage. So definitely a big loss there for the Brewers, and I mean, not a bad trade off here with Navarez, but you're definitely going to see some growing pains there at that position. Just losing. You're transferring over to a guy who has the numbers, but Grandal, I mean, just he was money there at the plate.
Yeah, so let's move on to the starting rotation now, and this is where we're seeing the problems for this team. The first starter for this team who would start a theoretical opening day would be Brandon Woodruff. He had 22 games started, a 3.62 ERA in 121 and 2/3 innings. His FIP was way lower though at 3.01. So Jensen, like you brought up, Hiora not so solid at second base. Braun not the best defender out there in the outfield. So maybe defense hurt him a little bit. His FIP was all the way down at 3.01. So that's very encouraging. His strikeouts per nine were 10.5 per nine. That's elite. Walks were very low as well at 2.22 per nine. That's both of those are above average. So he's probably the best starting pitcher they have. They have Adrian Hauser slotted in the 2-hole. He had 35 games, only 18 of them being starts. He had a 3.72 ERA, 9.5 strikeouts per nine, around 3 walks per nine. So this is, decent guy at 2, but on any other team, you're talking 4 or 5 starter. Then they got Brett Anderson from Oakland on a free agent deal, 31 starts last year, 3.89 ERA and 176 innings. This is the real teller for me, though. 3.89 ERA, but a 4.57 FIP. This is a guy that pitched in Oakland, huge ballpark, number one. So not a lot of guys are hitting it out of the ballpark. You have foul territory, due to the fact that the Raiders used to play there for football. They have huge foul territories. That adds out. And then they had an elite defense. That infield defense for Oakland, best in baseball, with Chapman, Semien, and Olsen as being 3 of the best defenders at their respective positions. So Brett Anderson definitely benefited from being in an Oakland Athletics uniform. Then they made a trade for Eric Lauer. They actually traded away their best starting pitcher, arguably, Zach Davies, to do this. And they got Luis Urias in that trade as well. They picked up Eric Lauer, left-handed pitcher. He's a vet. He has 29 games started last year. He had a 4.45 ERA, 4.23 FIP. Not a lot of strikeouts per nine, 8 per nine. And then they have Josh Lindblom, who they got from Korea. He used to be in the major leagues, took a few years, figured it out over there in Korea, and that's their 5 starter. That's not a great rotation, guys. What are your thoughts? Steven.
So you look at the number 1 starter, Woodruff. I mean, I like him a whole lot. 11-3, 3.62 ERA. But then you're working off the one spot, and that's when you're going to start to see some issues. I think, Brett Anderson is going to be the number 2 guy for them, just based off ERA, and he had 13 wins. But getting backed by that Oakland defense, like you said, playing in a bigger ballpark where the balls are hard to get out of that park and get help there. But Lauer, I think getting rid of Davies in the offseason, that trade, but I think that's going to hurt right there. You're going to see some growing pains there, but he's a left-handed guy, has some good stuff to work on. And then Lindblom, I don't know. That move to me is going to be very we'll see if it works out for him, but taking a couple of years off from like the major league level, it's just a different game. Once you come over stateside and you're playing, there's so many guys that are working constantly day in and day out, and you transfer leagues, it's a different mindset. So we'll see how this rotation evens out throughout the year, but definitely some things to work on.
Yeah, I mean, the thing I would say with Lindblom is that, the only other example really that we have of this in recent time is Miles Michaelis on St. Louis. He also went overseas, came back to the big leagues last year, had a nice year. But what are your thoughts, Jensen, on this rotation?
I mean, it's the same way that I felt the last few years about the Brewers rotation, just not very good. It doesn't really
Yeah.
make you excited about anything, but they've had decent pitching, starting pitching anyways, the last few years, and it hasn't really hurt them much, but it hasn't really helped them either. I love Woodruff as our number one. Um, with the Lindblom thing, I kind of think they're trying to go for like getting the Korea guy like they did with Eric Thames and how well that worked out for them getting him from Korea. So I think they're kind of trying to see if maybe they can find a little diamond in the rough again along those same lines. But yeah,
Yeah.
I
I
was
mean,
hoping they would
yeah.
make a move in the offseason, but I think getting rid of Davies was more for having the funds to sign Yelich, which was the bigger deal overall, in my opinion.
Yeah, it could have been for that, I guess, but it's like, what did you really trade him for? You traded him for Urias, who might be very good. I mean, he really could be. But the fact of the matter is that they have a lot of great hitters in this lineup, and they need pitching more than they needed hitting. So it's definitely questionable. You could have maybe moved off other guys to keep Yelich. But, Jensen, I mean, you watch the Brewers. How do they do it? I mean, they usually, like you said, the last few years, they haven't really had the best rotations, but they've been making the playoffs. How do they do it?
Their bullpen has just been lights out the last few years, especially, and Council really has the bullpen game down big time. There's a lot of times where they don't even have a fourth or fifth starter, and they would just do an entire bullpen game. And, I mean, it's definitely risky, but it's worked out for them lately.
Yeah, and that's a perfect segue there. We'll move over to this bullpen. And listen, I mean, this guy, Josh Hader, is probably the best reliever in baseball. 2.62 ERA, 75 and two-thirds innings in 61 games. It's not just that, though. He had 37 saves as well. He had 138 total strikeouts and 75 and two-thirds. That's insane. That's 16.4 strikeouts per nine. That's unheard of. I mean, that is unheard of. I mean, I can't even fathom how that's even possible. I mean, that's basically striking out everyone you face. And then they have Corey Knebel coming back from injury this year. When he was healthy, he struck out 14.3 per nine. So those are two guys. If you can get them rolling, that's a great 8-9 punch there.
Yeah, Josh Hader to me is one of the best pitchers out of the bullpen to watch. It's electric. I mean, his slider, his stuff he has going out there, it's almost unhittable in a way. And last year in the playoff game against the Nationals, it wasn't his fault. I mean, he was pitching in that game, that situation, and Grissom has that error in right field and run score, but his stuff is it's keen on striking out people out constantly. He doesn't. Rarely do you see guys put balls in play on him, and if it is in play, it's a weak pop up, or it's a ground ball. I mean, he doesn't. There's not really much there where he has to work on. I mean, I definitely one of the best pitchers in baseball coming out of the bullpen, and then you got Knebel out in 19, and he's gonna be one of those guys that's gonna eat up a ton of innings this year. Seeing how he comes off of injury, but looking at his numbers, 3.5 ERA, 3.03 FIP. So definitely going to be one of their cornerstones of that bullpen with Hader. I think he's going to be probably their setup guy. Could be a bridge guy some days to eat some innings up. But I like their back end of the bullpen in Milwaukee.
For sure. And Jensen, is there any other thing in the bullpen out there? I mean, they have Peralta, David Phelps, Brent Suter. Are there any other guys in that bullpen that can contribute?
I've always been real high on Suter, and it was huge getting it back last year off of his Tommy John surgery. And he's a guy that can go 3-4 innings if you need him in a pinch. And he's also just a good bench locker room guy that gets everybody excited and gets them back into the games. And then Peralta, I know they re-signed him this offseason and have a lot of faith in him and his arm. But he's just been kind of an absolute roller coaster, just up and down all the time. Like he'll have one start where he's giving up 1-2 hits a game, and then he'll go and give up 8 hits in 1 inning. And it's just ridiculous, but he's fun to watch. Just got to get his control down. And then I'm really excited to see if Knebel possibly slides back into the closer role, because you could tell by the end of the year, Hader was just absolutely gassed last year. And I think him being the closer all season just kind of messed him up towards the end there.
Yeah, so maybe he's better suited for that, eighth inning role, not being relied upon for that ninth
Exactly.
inning. So let's finish this pot up here and what's their grade for the offseason? We'll start with Steven.
I give him a B plus. I like the additions they made with obviously Il Garcia, definitely a guy who has power potential in that lineup and is bad. Gets on base, works good counts. He's a great hustle player too. He's faster than people think, being such a big guy. But and then you added Sogard as well, Justin Smoke. Um, so I think guys that you added to the lineup gives you some depth. So for Milwaukee, what's going to be key for them this year is having that one through eight, 1 through 9, really just carry the weight for them to win games again this year. But I give them a B plus this offseason.
For me,
Jensen?
I'd give them a B minus, and the only reason they got into the B category at all is because they were able to sign Yelich. They just lost way too much off the team last year, and I mean, I know they had to do it to clear the room for Christian Yelich, but to me, this lineup just doesn't make me overly excited. I mean, I'm very intrigued to see what they can do together. I just don't. There's just so many question marks for me. And then just another year where they don't have an answer at starting pitching is very frustrating. I mean, this is probably the fourth or fifth year in a row now where we've had no answers at all in starting pitching, and I know a lot of Brewer fans are getting really upset with it. But I am excited, but the Yelich signing definitely bumps the grade up a lot for me.
Yeah, that's just what you're going to have to deal with. If you sign a superstar, you're going to have to make concessions in other places. And, Mike, we didn't even mention it. Mike Moustakas is also gone too. He went to a
Yeah.
division rival. So that's another significant bat. I mean, it's good to say that you added guys to replace them. You got Narvaez to replace Grandal. You got Justin Smoke to replace Eric Thames. You got Eric Sogard and Brock Holt to replace somehow Mike Moustakas. You got Garcia out there in the outfield. So they're very much, the Rays of the National League in the sense that they will always retool that lineup. But they're not like the Rays in the sense that, they develop pitching and that's what they need. Of course, they could go ahead and swing a trade at the trade deadline and get that big starting pitcher, kind of like they did a few years ago. They got Gio Gonzalez. But I mean, even him, he's not that ace type of pitcher that you would want. But as far as my grade goes, I'd probably give them a B solid, just because they really did do a nice job of retooling what they lost, and they do have a lineup here that's pretty good. I mean, can I rely on Eric Sogard? I don't know. Can I rely on Narvaez? I don't know. Can Kane come back? Is Hiora the real deal? These are legitimate questions, but I would give them a solid B, and especially because they did not address that starting rotation, which should have been addressed. And then where do we have them finishing in the divisions? I'll go first. I'm going to make my decision right on the spot here. I'm going to say fourth. And if you had asked me at this time yesterday, I would have had them in third. I did some breakdowns yesterday and really looked into these rosters, and I really undervalued St. Louis. So I've got Milwaukee in fourth place. What about you
I'm going to
guys?
say third place. Slightly biased, obviously, but I just think the Cubs will kind of have a falling off and end up in fourth. And I really love the moves that Cincinnati made in the
Wow.
offseason. And I think St. Louis will compete again like they always do. So I got Cincinnati 1, St. Louis 2, and then the Brewers 3 with the Cubs behind.
Wow. All
That's
right. So what about
bold,
you,
yeah.
Steven? Yeah.
I got him in third right now. I had him in second last night, but diving down the rotation, which I think could hurt them this year. But I have them sitting around 85 wins, and I think they'll be in third place. But this division's like up for grabs, like we talked about it. I mean, Cincinnati has a good rotation. It could dish out so many different ways for every team. But I got Milwaukee in third right now.
Yeah, I mean, 1 through 4, it could be any order. I mean, any of these teams could win it. Any of these teams could finish in fourth. They really are so close together. I mean, every team in this division has a weakness. I mean, I remember seeing a projection the other day where none of these teams were even predicted for 90 wins. So, this is just going to be a lot of teams beating up on each other. You'll probably see you will definitely see 2 of these 5 division teams making the playoffs, but you could even possibly see 3. a lot like the NL East in that way. So that'll do it for this Milwaukee Brewers pod. We want to thank Jensen for coming on as a special guest for this episode. And we want to thank Stephen Cashin, as always, as well, for coming on. Tomorrow, you'll get to hear our St. Louis Cardinals season preview, the defending NL Central champs. You can listen to this podcast anywhere. Follow us on Twitter at Strict Sports FAU. You can listen to us on Spotify, YouTube, Anchor, Breaker, Google Podcasts, Radio Public, and Pocket Casts. And I think YouTube, I think I mentioned YouTube as well. That'll do it for this podcast. I'm Jacob for Jensen and Steven. We'll see you next time.